You already know that writing a boring college application essay is a great way to get rejected from your top choice schools, but what's it really mean for an essay to be boring? In this video, I'll talk about common mistakes that make your essays unoriginal as well as surprising ways for your essays to be uninteresting. First, let's get the typical cliches out of the way. Topics that have been written about millions of times, even if they're good topics, are now exhausted avenues. We've talked about it on this channel, you've seen it on other channels, you've heard it at school, the championship game, or the service trip, or the story of your grandmother, or your life as an immigrant learning to balance your new and old identities, or a breakup or a divorce. I mean, the reason these topics are so easy to list is they write themselves. Now, the first student to have written any of these could have had an awesome essay, maybe the first thousands of people or tens of thousands, I don't know. But people typically aren't engaged in a movie where from the first 5 minutes they can guess the rest of the story. And that's the problem with cliche. It's not necessarily inherently bad, but it's boring. And boring will wreck your chances of acceptance. If we narrow our focus, we'll see this principle applies to things like opening your essay with a dictionary definition, opening your essay with a quote from somebody else, or introducing your essay with a meta opening. For instance, as SpongeBob quietly plays in the other room, I struggle to find the words to describe how excited I am to attend your university. That's why I've waited so long to write this essay. When I was in middle school, that's how students began speeches for student council president. When you write this way, it sounds like you lack the capacity for innovative thinking. That was a refresher on cliches you probably already know. Now let's talk about some more insidious ways that boring can sneak into your writing. But first, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Chris from Mooshly.com. I have an English bachelor's with a creative writing concentration and an MBA. I'm a consultant and professional writer, and I've helped a lot of my connections improve their writing and get accepted to elite academic programs and institutions, like Ivy Leagues, medical schools, and MBA programs. I frequently get asked for writing advice, so I put some of it out here to help you for free. I wrote a very detailed college essay introduction guide I highly recommend you check out. Click the link in the description to download it for free. Cliches are things we've heard so many times, they're boring. Reused topics and writing tactics are obvious ways to copy things that have already been done. So what's the surprise way to be boring? Telling a unique story in a tedious way. Let me explain. We talked earlier about watching a movie lacking subtlety, right? Let's say you have a powerful and unique essay topic. Maybe getting struck by lightning taught you wanted to open a flower shop. Admittedly, that's an example I didn't spend any time thinking about, but if we left it at that, it's at least somewhat interesting. The cause and effect is not immediately obvious, and I could guarantee the story could be filled with twists and turns. However, if the intro of this essay was, when I was 14, I played in an open field prior to a thunderstorm. I was unfortunately struck by lightning and spent 6 months with a therapist to overcome the trauma. We talked a lot about confronting the fragility of life, and I realized I love flowers as a symbol of fleeting beauty. So now I want to open a flower store. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. That's, now it's boring, right? The rest of the essay tells us what we already know. So that's the first lesson. You must leave yourself room to introduce stakes as you tell the story. You're not writing a murder mystery, so I would recommend against having the ending be a surprise. The narrative should lead into the conclusion, but you have to balance those two extremes. Next, lifeless details and emotions. Your personal essay is not an academic research paper. You want to remain professional, but it has to sound personal. Omitting unique expressions, reflections, and insights is a great way to make it sound like anybody could have written it. And if anybody could have written it, it's not that interesting. My noun and adjective pairing exercise is a great way to combat this. Next, you can blaseify an exceptional story with overused phrases. For my international audience, that's not a real word, don't use it. But here's what I mean. If you find yourself summarizing anything with, I learned a valuable lesson, or this experience taught me a valuable lesson, or it was then that I realized, stop. This is like starting your conclusion with, in conclusion, then restating the rest of your paper. Show yourself applying the lesson or at least state it explicitly in a different way. I'll go over some others, but I recommend you share your essays with your friends and see which repeated phrases you can cut. Ever since I was a child, or for as long as I can remember. There are a few ways to address these, but it usually isn't even relevant. Let's say you wrote, for as long as I can remember, I've loved cookies. Is that different than I love cookies? If it's important to mention that you loved cookies as a child, you can begin with a memory of eating a cookie before you could read. Even just, I've always loved cookies might be preferable depending on the situation. This logic also applies to, I have always been passionate about. Finally, it was a life-changing experience. Just show how it changed you. Catch-all expressions like these enervate the life from statements. If it was really life-changing, it should be easy to describe how. No need to say it. If you want to guarantee you have an essay introduction like nobody else, click the link in the description and download my free college essay introduction guide, and I'll see you next time.